We have a problem developing here.
You have Ebola.
Stop! Don't! Tell me to calm down! Ah!
Hello friends, welcome back to Fastcuts. 93 Days is a 2016 Nigerian drama thriller film directed and co-produced by Steve Gukas. The cast includes Steve Gukas, Bimbo Akintola, Danny Glover, Samkel Idhalama and many others. The story begins by showing the city of Lagos, Nigeria. An ambulance is seen passing through that city. A girl inside the ambulance is quite worried because something is wrong, so the ambulance arrives in front of an empty hospital. A man wearing a medical kit comes and opens the door of the ambulance. As soon as we see him, we feel like there is some kind of virus in that city. Let's see what it is and why the woman is worried. The next scene shows the incident which happened 7 days ago. A man named Sawyer exits the airport in Lagos, Nigeria. He came from his hometown to Lagos for specialist treatment. In the next scene, a doctor is talking to someone on the phone. Then a nurse came there and says that a diplomat from Liberia had arrived. He says we need to start the tests right away. At this time, Dr. Amayo was celebrating her husband's birthday party. When they are about to have their food, Amayo holds the hands of her husband and son and prays. Immediately she gets a call from the hospital. Amayo hangs up the phone saying, "You start all the checkups. I'll be right back." In the next scene, Dr. Agana and her husband is going in a car. Didn't we see a woman sitting in an ambulance at the beginning of the movie? It was a doctor named Agana. She is dropped off at the hospital and her husband leaves. Then Agana changes her dress and goes to the hospital. She meets a girl named Justina there. Justina is a new nurse at their hospital. Immediately all the senior doctors came there. There is a meeting going on. Amayo was among them. She is the first to welcome Justina to their hospital. Afterward, they talk about Sawyer's condition. They say he has malaria. We need to check it as soon as possible. Also, he is a diplomat in Liberia. At this time, Sawyer is sitting in his room. The PA says, "I will call the doctor," and he prepares to leave. Sawyer says, "Then you tell the embassy that I'm here." "Sure, sir," says the PA and leaves. Afterward, the doctors come to Sawyer. "Hello, sir. I'm Dr. Amayo. We're here to examine you. You say you have malaria. We want to check that." Amayo asks, "I heard you saying to give you all the injections you need and discharge from here as soon as possible. Why the rush?" Sawyer says, "I have a meeting here. It won't happen if I'm not there. Anyway, I have to go soon." Amayo asks, "Have you been in contact with anyone having Ebola?" Sawyer is shocked to hear that. "How many times do I have to tell you all? I told all the doctors here as soon as I arrived that I don't have Ebola, and I haven't been in contact with anyone. Now if you keep asking me that a lot, it'll drive me crazy." The Ebola virus has now been confirmed in the country of Liberia. It was at such a time that Sawyer came from Liberia to Ebola-free Nigeria for malaria treatment. In the next scene, Amayo goes home that night. Then her son is seen working on something on the laptop. Amayo tells all the things that happened in the hospital today. Amayo shares all things with his son. In return, the son also shares everything with the mother. The next day, a meeting of the senior doctors is held, including Amio and Benjamin, to talk about Sawyer's condition. Amayo says that he should be given all the necessary treatment and sent away immediately. "How is his condition?" asks the special doctor. "We have confirmed that he has malaria. Also, he has a bad headache, abdominal pain, and nausea," says Amayo. "So looking at all his current symptoms, it looks like he has Ebola," Amayo says. Benjamin and the special doctor are shocked to hear that. "Isn't that just a feeling?" asks the special doctor. Then Benjamin says, "No, we shouldn't neglect it. We have to make sure what it is." Then Amayo says, "Then we'll check it out." This time, Justin and Agana talk about Sawyer's condition. Immediately Amayo comes there. She gives Sawyer a chart to check for Ebola. Then Amayo says, all the doctors who go to Sawyer should be told to wear a medical kit. So Amayo goes to Sawyer and tells him that he will have to undergo the Ebola test. Sawyer agrees. Immediately some nurses came there and took Sawyer's blood. In the next scene, Benjamin and Amayo were in the hospital. Immediately the Liberian embassy ambassador came there. saying, "It's our diplomat lying here. You need to treat him and get him discharged as soon as possible." At this time, Justina is sitting at the hospital counter. Igana comes there. Justina then says, "I'm scared to think about Sawyer. If he's Ebola positive, won't we get the virus too?" She is very scared when she hears about the virus. But Igana was among the less daring. She reassures Justina by saying, "That won't happen. Be brave." In the next scene, Ameo tells the state health governor over the phone about the current conditions at the hospital. She also requested the governor to instruct the people to be vigilant. The governor said that this is a small matter. We are not sure that he has Ebola. It is not right for us to scare people because of just a suspicion. So she tells Benjamin everything the health governor said. Ameo says after listening to the health governor, "It seems like he's not taking it very seriously." Benjamin says, "Never mind, we have to be careful." In the next scene, a professor is presenting a presentation about Ebola on the screen to government officials. He has done extensive research on Ebola, so he shows all the ill effects of Ebola on the screen in detail. He shows many things like people who died, suffers without treatment, and so on. In the next scene, Ameo is at her home. Her son asks, "Mom, are there any Ebola patients in your hospital?" Many people are tweeting about that on Twitter. He is scared because his mother works in that hospital. He is afraid that his mother will be affected by the virus. Ameo reassures him, "Didn't I tell you about Sawyer with malaria? He's a bit tired, but it's not sure if he has Ebola. You don't have to worry. We're all handling it with caution." The very next day, all the doctors hold an emergency meeting. Benjamin says none of you should be afraid of the news that is spreading outside. We will not be in any trouble. If it is confirmed that Sawyer has Ebola, the government has promised to send all the necessary medicines to the hospital. Then Justina stands up and says, "My husband is afraid that something will happen to me. So he has told me not to go to the hospital anymore. What should I do?" Then Ameo gives everyone courage by saying, "My son and husband are afraid like this, but they know there is no one else to treat those infected with the virus. Anyway, we will fight against the disease. We should give comfort to the patients who are waiting for death. We should all work together." So that evening Ameo goes to Benjamin's office with a paper in her hand, then hands it to Benjamin. It was the result of Sawyer's Ebola checkup. Yes, as expected, Sawyer was diagnosed with Ebola. At that time, Sawyer began to yell at the doctor saying, "I have a meeting. I can't stay here any longer. I have to go right away." Then Ameo comes there. She confides in Sawyer, "Sir, you have been diagnosed with Ebola. You cannot leave here now." Sawyer is shocked to hear that. "I have Ebola," he laments. A government official comes to the hospital after hearing that Sawyer has Ebola. She talks about the future proceedings with senior doctors. "Ebola can sometimes get worse. We have to deal with it as soon as possible," says Benjamin. "That's right. We are shifting to a hospital for that. Until then you should treat all the patients coming here with caution. I will talk to the government and do whatever is necessary," says the government official. "You should inform the people as soon as possible that Ebola has been confirmed in this country." Later, a press conference is called by all the health government officials. They are saddened to report the first confirmed case of Ebola in Nigeria. They inform that all people should be cautious, and that if anyone shows any symptoms, they should inform the hospital immediately. All the people are now on alert. At the airports and on roads, people are only allowed to cross country borders after Ebola checkups. In the next scene, Ameo drives off in a car to a deserted hospital. An ambulance was shown arriving at this hospital at the beginning of the story. The director of the medical department is standing outside that hospital. When he sees Ameo, he calls one of the workers there. He was an Ebola specialist doctor from America named David. That hospital has been closed for years. Then they plan to turn the hospital into a treatment center for Ebola patients. Then he shows Ameo all the facilities in that hospital. Ameo sees some rusted beds lying in his ward. She is surprised to see it all. "Are you putting patients in this place, where there are no facilities?" she asks in surprise. "This is a facility that the government has provided for us. Moreover, this hospital is far away from the city, so the virus will not spread quickly to anyone," says the director. In the next scene, the doctors give Sawyer an injection, so they do every checkup Sawyer needs daily. The next day, the doctors return to Sawyer's room to administer the next injection, but he is not seen in the bed. When they look around, they find him lying dead in the bathroom. There is blood all over the place. They are scared to see him dead. In the next scene, Ameo and the Liberian government official are seen talking. Then Benjamin comes up there. Upon seeing him, the official says, "The Liberian government has decided to cremate Sawyer's body right here." Benjamin asks, "What about all the legal hurdles when someone from another country is cremated here?" "The Liberian government will take care of it. You don't have to be afraid," the officer says and leaves. Then Benjamin tells Ameo, I made a list of all the doctors and nurses that have been here since Sawyer arrived. They should all be in quarantine, so we can figure out how many people have Ebola, says Ameo. Benjamin thinks it's a good idea. Then let's do that, he says. In the next scene, a few people are shown wrapping up Sawyer's body to be taken away for cremation. At the same time, in another part of the hospital, a woman who is a government official calls together all the doctors and nurses. She officially informs them that everyone must be quarantined. You will all be given a medical filler to check if you are infected with Ebola. You must test it twice a day. If anyone tests positive, you must immediately inform the Ebola emergency center. Then our man will come and take you to another hospital. You will receive all the necessary treatment. You must all cooperate with us, the official said. After that, you should choose a house for quarantine where there are not many people in your family. You should stay in quarantine for 21 days. No one should be afraid. This virus is less airborne, but no one else should suffer because of us. We should handle everything carefully, says Ameo. Finally, Benjamin gives courage to all of them by saying, "Don't be afraid, none of you. Nothing will happen to us. We will win." Sawyer's body is wrapped and taken in an ambulance to be cremated. After that, they incinerate the body in a place where all bodies are incinerated. In the next scene, Igana is now living at her aunt's house. She calls her husband and tells him everything that happened. Then the husband asks, "How are you now?" She reassures her husband, "I'm fine. I have a medical filler with me to test, so if I get Ebola, I'll know right away." In the next scene, the final stage of work is going inside the empty hospital. The director says Sawyer died yesterday. The virus will spread to many more people. David says, "We have to get all the facilities here right now. We can't take this virus lightly." At this time, Benjamin is at his home. Immediately he gets a call from Evelyn, a nice guy at the hospital. He investigates the matter. "Doctor, I've tested positive for Ebola. I'm scared. What should I do?" She cries. "Don't cry. Go to the Ebola center as we said back then. You won't have a problem there. I'll do whatever it takes," says Benjamin. He then calls Ameo on the phone. At this time, Ameo was sleeping comfortably at home. She wakes up when she hears the phone ringing. Then Benjamin tells her that the virus began to spread. Ameo is shocked to hear that. The next day, Igana also tested positive. She frantically calls the Ebola emergency center. The ambulance from the emergency center comes to her house. People wearing medical kits take her in an ambulance. Then the ambulance takes her to the hospital. Her aunt watches her go sadly. After that, those wearing kits clean the entire house with medicine. Igana is taken to the hospital they have prepared. David opens the door. This scene was shown at the beginning of the story. David asks Igana, "You don't need to be scared. First, we need to make sure you are Ebola positive. For that, we need a sample of your blood. Do you understand?" She agrees to it. So they took her blood. She was only let off the wagon after it was confirmed she had Ebola, because they are afraid that if they put someone there who does not have the virus, they will also get the virus. That's why they decided to keep Igana in the ambulance until her test came back positive. Another doctor also showed positive. He makes a phone call to the Ebola center, then inquire about the procedures. Then the guy on the phone says, "A hospital has been arranged here for you all. You will have to stay here." The doctor refused to accept it. "Even if I had Ebola, I wouldn't come and lay there," he says, because he has 2 small children. He is afraid that they will be alone if he is not here. Immediately one of his sons came there. He gets angry when he sees him. "Didn't I tell you not to come here? Go from here immediately." He was afraid that his son would also get the disease. Hearing that, his son cries and leaves. Then the doctor tells the person on the phone, "I will come to your hospital. You send the car." In the next scene, the director is having a yelling conversation with someone on the phone. He is very tense. Seeing that, David asks the director if is there a problem. David, "No one is coming forward to take care and bring patients. What should we do now?" says the director. So the very next day itself, David goes to the president of the city hospitals union saying, "I'll deal with it." David tells him about Ebola. "You should leave us some stuff for the Ebola treatment service." "No one is willing to join us," says David. Union president retorts, "What can I do if they don't come with me? They are afraid to." David then shows him some photos and says this is what Ebola will be like. If we want to stop it, we need some workers. If not, this city will turn into this. You have to assign some people to us somehow, says David and leaves. Then the union president takes all those photos and looks at them. He is saddened to see all that. In the next scene, the husband will know that Igana has been affected by the virus. He immediately calls Igana on the phone. "You said that there is nothing wrong with you. Now suddenly why did you go to the hospital?" asks the husband. "Don't worry, I'm still fine. I'll be right back, she says sadly. Then promise me you'll come back, says the husband. But she doesn't reply, because even she wasn't sure that she would come back. The Ebola virus was terrible. At this time, the union president summons all the ambulance workers to his office. He tells them all the things that David said. None of you should be afraid of the virus. We will give you as much security as we can. All you have to do is get the sick to the hospital. Many lives may be saved because of you. But first, you have to prepare for it. Are you ready to go, he asks. Then a woman raises her hand. Then all the drivers raise their hands, so they all get ready to bring the patients. This time, the doctor who called the ambulance earlier is shown. An ambulance has reached his home. His brother and his 2 sons watch him go. He leaves his children in the care of his brother. In the next scene, Igana is taken out of the ambulance. She tested positive for the virus in the blood test, so they take her to the ward there. She is surprised to see all the conditions there. Are you admitting us to this place? There are no necessities here. It doesn't even look like a hospital, says Igana. David said, don't worry, because it was so quick. We were only able to prepare this facility. The necessary medicine and other supplies will arrive here soon. Then she looks around and sees Evelyn, their nurse, lying there. Evelyn, have you been here? When did you get here? What happened to you? Igana asks too many questions at once. Then Evelyn tells everything. Then my children are alone at home. Who will cook for them? They have no one but me, says Evelyn sadly. There will be nothing wrong with them. They will be fine. You don't need to be afraid, Igana says. Evelyn is feared that she will die from the virus. Nothing will happen to you, Igana reassures her. By then, an ambulance arrives bringing the doctor who left earlier. Later, Igana is shown caring for Evelyn. Evelyn is very sick now. As for Igana, she is also very scared to see her condition. At this time, Ameo is at home on the computer researching about Ebola. Then her husband comes there. Then he checks if she has eaten the food that was prepared for her earlier. But Ameo had not eaten anything. Why don't you eat anything? Don't you like this food, he asks. She says, I like the food you made. I'll eat after work. I should not see the food here when I come again. You must eat the whole food, he says and leaves. Then she looked at the computer again. The union president prepares the list of everyone infected by the virus and hand over to the board. Then everyone is shown living in fear of Ebola. In the next scene, the current status of the ward is shown. One can be seen sitting there eating constantly. He is the driver who picked up Sawyer from the airport. He also has the virus. Moreover, there are many people in that ward now. A few people talk about the driver after seeing him eating. We all have the virus now because of the guy who brought it in. And then he sits and eats it without fear, says one. Then the guy in the bed says to the other guy, it doesn't matter if you blame him. He doesn't know the guy he picked has the virus. It's all God's judgment. David comes to the ward early the next morning. He talks to Igana. During the conversation, he gives Igana a card. It's a card to record how many times you vomit, get diarrhea or have a stomach ache each day. David says, you have to mark every single thing you do on this card every day. I'll always come and check. I want to know if you've changed. But she listens to everything he says as if she has no confidence. Then he said, you don't need to be so tense. It's wrong to say that everyone infected with Ebola will die. Many people have lived. In the past, I used to treat every patient like this in America. Then there was a person who was sure to die at any moment because of the power of the virus. But he had confidence that he would live. He continued to fight every day until finally he came back to life with full health. If you look at what he went through, you can come back to life without any problems. David gives her confidence by saying, but you have to have confidence. Immediately they see Evelyn pooping on the bed next door. David then cleans it up. It is night, and Igana as well as the doctor who is lying there sick have stomachaches. Because of that, you can see them getting stronger. Then they lie down in great pain. All this shows us the conditions of those affected by Ebola. The next morning came. Igana watches Evelyn sleep. Immediately she gets up. How is it now? Igana asks about the pain. Same as ever. It hurts a lot, says Evelyn. Then Igana says, I have taken the medicine for you. Drink it. Evelyn says, Doctor, I don't know. I don't feel like taking any medicine. I'm so scared that something will happen to me. Igana calms Evelyn down by saying, just take the medicine. All your ailments will go away. The next day, Ameo's son comes to Benjamin's house. He never comes to Benjamin's without reason. Benjamin says, hey, is there a problem? Then he tells Benjamin that mother is very tired. She is not eating anything. She never sleeps at night and wakes up late in the day. I am scared. Can you tell her to take care of her health? She will listen, says the son. Benjamin sends him away saying, don't be afraid, my dear. I will talk to your mother. In the Ebola ward this time, Igana looks at Evelyn's disease information card. Seeing that, Igana says, Evelyn, it's not right to go like this. You should eat a little more. I get scared when I see your card. You are constantly vomiting. Evelyn dies, saying, take good care of my children. Igana gets scared seeing that. At that time her husband calls her, but she doesn't pick up the phone. She breaks down and cries because Evelyn is dead. Not only that, she cries thinking that one day she too will die like this. Everyone knows that Evelyn is dead. The union president removes her name from the sick list. Then he writes her name on the board where the names of the dead are written. The screen again shows the Ebola ward itself. Justina is also admitted there due to illness. Justina asks Igana, Evelyn's been dead for a long time. Why haven't they taken her body away yet? Igana says there's going to be some legal barrier to incinerating Ebola patients. They're going to keep her there until it's okay. It is night and Ameo goes to Benjamin's house. She is very tired. Benjamin called her and she went there. So they talk about Evelyn's death. Then Benjamin tells Ameo, your son came to me to tell about you. They are all very scared of you. I can tell that you are very tired just by looking at you. You should get an Ebola test immediately. But you will get all the medicine you need. Then all your tiredness will go away, says Benjamin. Then she says, doctor, I have nothing. I was researching about Ebola, so I had to get some sleep. Sometimes it's the exhaustion. Evelyn's body is being taken away to cremate. Justina sees it and says, I'll be the next one to die, I'll be the one. Igana is sitting right next to her. She reassures Justina by saying, nothing like that will happen. The next day they found the driver dead. At night, Igana plays a song on her phone to help Justina fall asleep. At that time, they take the body of the driver. All the patients who were there were looking at it worriedly. Everyone is waiting for their death. And it could be at any moment. In the morning, Igana gets up and goes to see if Justina has woken up. Then she sees Justina lying there dead. Later on, Igana felt very tired. You can see her writhing in pain while going to bed. Ameo is becoming weaker day by day. Then the son goes there and calls mother. She was too tired to respond to his calls. Then he says, Mom, the ambulance is here. Let's go to the hospital. Hearing that, Ameo slowly gets up from the bed and walks towards the ambulance. This time David is giving clothes to new arrivals at the Ebola Center. David praises them for coming forward to treat the sick. Then someone runs up to him. He tells him that Dr. Ameo is coming here to do a test. When Ameo reached the center, David goes and opens the door. Then Ameo says, David, you look different than the last time I saw you. The last time Ameo saw David, he was not wearing any kit. Now it's all dressed up. Then David says, not only me, but this hospital has changed. David says, we need to do your blood test. Then we have a private room for you. Hearing that, she says, I'm not here to stay. You just need to test me for Ebola. David says, we're asking you to stay here for your safety. Anyway, let's do a test. If it's okay, you can go back home. Ameo agrees to that. So they take her out of the ambulance. Her son watches from far as they take her away. In the next scene, David tells Igana that Ameo is here. She gets sad hearing that. Then David looks at her medical card. He sees that her vomiting has subsided. David says, good, you're getting better. Just keep taking the meds like this. You'll be fine. Ameo has tested positive for the disease. She is admitted to a private room in the hospital. She is talking to her son on the phone. Her son is also talking to his mother on the phone from outside the window of her room. She cries about his condition and says you should take good care of your father. Hearing her cry, her son also cries. Then David goes to Ameo. Then he asks how she is now. Just tell us whatever you need, says David. In the next scene, the TV shows the current Ebola situation. The union president has gone there to give an interview on that channel. The interviewer asks him about Ebola. Then he says in the interview that most of the people infected with Ebola are employees of the hospital where Sawyer was admitted. The other cases are few. The reality is that it has not spread to many people. Thank God for that. In the next scene, Ameo is brought from the private room to the ward. She is not very well now. Igana sees it all. She asks David about Ameo's current status. Then David says Ameo is sick. Anything can happen to the freckled girl. We can't even be sure right now. If anything happens to Ameo while we're not here, you have to deal with it. Igana understood from David's words that Ameo is about to die. Then Igana went near Ameo. Igana sadly tells Ameo, you were a good doctor. You are like my mother to me. Nothing will happen to you. We are all praying for you. Ameo is sleeping soundly, so she couldn't hear anything that Igana said. Ameo dies that night. The president writes her name in the list of the dead. Ameo's son walks around not knowing what to do next. David immediately goes to him. David calms him down by telling him a couple of comforting words. But after David left, Ameo's son couldn't control his grief and burst into tears. In the next scene, Igana's illness was completely cured. She walks out out of the Ebola center. Outside, her family and friends are waiting for her. They give her a big welcome party. Because she was the first Ebola survivor, she is overjoyed to see their love. So 93 days passed. Nigeria is completely free of the Ebola virus. They organize a memorial service in an auditorium to remember the deceased. The program is by Dr. Benjamin. We can see all the photos of the dead behind him. Benjamin preaches saying, "Today there is no Ebola virus in this country. We all stood together and fought against the virus. So this country is breathing fresh air today." The movie ends here. Let us know in the comments down below, as we would always love to discuss it with you all. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll stick around you in another video.